Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with these nerds.
Nate the Nerdarch.
Nerdarch is Ted.
And today we're going to introduce 5 new mounts to use in your 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons game.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with us.
Down in the description, you can find the link to pick up one of Nerdarchy's first products. It helps support the channel, and hopefully it's something cool that you're going to want to put in your game.
All right, so we've been working behind the scenes, as there's always so many plates spinning here at Nerdarchy. We've been tossing around this idea to put out a product to offer some unique mounts into 5th edition D&D.
So, Fantastical Mounts of Chimes of Discordia is what we're launching with, and you guys are kind of like the brainchilds behind this. You guys have done all the writing, with Doug doing the editing and cleaning it up. I've injected some ideas for things, but you guys have done the heavy lifting. One of the things is actually in your game. The other one is in my game. And we were like, this is a cool thing that players could use or GMs could use.
Well, if you jump into the player's handbook, when you go to the equipment section, there's literally an exotic saddle. So it's like, we've already got rules for putting a mount on something or putting a saddle on a mount that's not used to being a mount. So,
right, and there's no mounts that match up. Maybe the Mastiff. I don't know. Like, that's it.
So what kind of things could there be? Now, long time ago, we did a video on a bizarre creature that I came up with, and it's a combination of bat, lizard, and spider, and it's called an abyssider. Whole thing got created because I was watching a kids show with my kids, and that was something that this one person liked. She liked all 3 of those. I'm like, well, why not mush that into one thing and say, here you go?
And then the other one, the Dranther, was something I introduced into our world because we had the Dragon Realm, and in the Dragon Realm there's like 3 conclaves. One of the spiritual conclave, the conclave of knowledge, and the conclave of the warrior. And the most esteemed warriors were actually Dragon Knights. Dubbed so by the Dragon Emperor himself. I'm like, well, they got to ride something, and they're not going to ride freaking horses, so they ride Dranthers.
Well, isn't everything in the Draconic realm like draconic in nature?
Right, and it's really, really big. So they ride war Dranthers, and there's a bit of a stigma of like only the knights can actually ride these things. Otherwise, you're going to have issues with the knighthood.
So Dranthers come in a variety of different sizes, but only those that are the best of the breed are ever trained to be war Dranthers. Going back to the Bizders, they're available in a variety of different sizes, and I even mentioned before that there's some travelers of the Underdark who actually get a tiny one and use it as their familiar, but they're a spectacular mount on the surface or below, because they can climb, they can fly, and they can walk.
And they spin webs.
And they do spin webs. But 2 things was not really going to be enough to launch as a product. So we put our heads together and said, what else do we want to put in this product? Where can we go next?
So we went big. And we went big with the gantewin, which is a really large woolly creature with six legs, and loves to eat, and it is a pretty tough critter.
So it's designed. It's actually a huge mount, and as Nate said, it loves to eat. So if you don't actually have food, you're gonna have disadvantage in trying to train this thing to do anything.
What is it? I'm not as familiar with these guys. So what do they actually look like other than having 6 legs and being woolly?
So I envisioned them as kind of like elephantine proportions with a head that's as big as its shoulders, because it wants to eat and chew. So the bigger the mouth, the better.
So I'm thinking like a big square blocky head with blocky teeth.
Yeah. The next one is the kangaram. And this isn't something that, it's just a kangaroo, because kangaroos are like 6 to 7 feet tall. This thing is like 9 to 11 feet tall. It's got armored plates on its body, all the way down its spine to its tail, and huge ram-like horns along the side of its head.
It's kind of like if you took a ram, a kangaroo, and an armadillo and mashed them together. I think that's kind of what you get.
That's what you get. And these things are, kind of ferocious. Whereas the Gantewin likes to just sit there and eat. These things are all about physical force. They have no problems. Like goats that butt their heads together. These guys are like that. The kangarams, they still kind of have some of that kangaroo mentality, so they might actually rear back on their tails, lock feet, and just slam heads until one of them is unconscious.
They're super aggressive.
Yeah.
And so all four limbs just end up intertwined, and it just becomes a headbutting competition of who's the biggest tough guy on the block, and then they're gonna go and try and mate with the female kangarams.
Yes, and with the kangarams, you have this. I mean, they've got this really cool sculpt cap plate and these really cool horns. So there's a real big favorite for the barbarian and the orc tribes in the region. So I could see like a whole group of tribesmen where like the elite people inside all have their like trophy helmets.
Now, I think jokingly, like the other thing we talked about was them having a pouch like a kangaroo, and halflings and gnomes riding in the pouch. But I don't think we went with that route.
No.
Yeah, I don't even know whether these guys have like the marsupial pouch. That part wasn't really discussed.
I don't think they do. Otherwise, there's going to be people who are going to get too many people will have died in the attempts of trying to get in that pouch when they're not supposed to be there.
Because that's where the feet are going to kick. Just become jelly.
Last, we have the water strider, which is a giant water-based beetle.
It's like an insect that's kind of a cross between a beetle and like a stick bug. And this thing actually secretes oil from its skins to actually be able to displace water and be able to actually walk across it, even though it's big enough that a small humanoid can actually ride on top of it.
Yeah. It also has the ability to create a kind of like a soap bubble around itself to dive underneath the water for a limited amount of time.
So what is it? Small creatures will be able to ride them and actually stay mounted on them underwater? Is that the idea?
That is absolutely the idea.
Yeah.
So gnomes, halflings, kobolds, goblins. You can now have a aquatic cavalry in essence. And when we were talking about this, like what I kind of envisioned like is water skeeters, like giant water skeeters essentially that skim across the water and they're really fast. So the ability to walk across. And then we're like, well, how can we make it really interesting?
Well, this like prompted a whole like scientific debate of, okay, well, the reason that the water skiers can do it is because they don't have enough mass to actually displace the water. So how do we do it with something that's actually big enough that it would just sink? So like that's where we came up with this whole oil.
They secrete their own ninja water walking shoes, basically, is the idea.
Yeah, and like I envision these things as like 4 to 5 feet long, long spindly legs that move quickly and don't stay on the water, just sitting there. They quickly move.
Yeah, because they're going to be balancing with the waves and the way the water's moving.
And then they can just vomit this bubble of oil and then like dive into it and it sticks with them because maybe it attaches to their paws or whatever, their claws.
Right. So now these things actually have swooping horns that come back off the side of their heads, and
also known as handles.
And in fact, you're 100% correct. So it actually made them really prominent for that. But because the way the body is shaped, these handles actually are how you transmit signals to where you want to go. So if you tap on one side of the one horn, but not the other, that's going to tell a thing that you're trying to turn. If you want to go forward, then you want to tap on the front. If you want to go backward, you tap on the back. And as long as your signals are correct, it'll be able to follow you.
Most importantly, where do you tap to turn on your turn signals? Because you don't want to be that a-hole that doesn't let the other water scooter drivers know which way you're going.
Oh, that's going to have to be done with a prestidigitation spell.
Yeah, so it's almost like a joystick kind of feel to it from the different tapping and echoing through its horns.
Well, so what kind of things can people expect to see in the book other than just the stats?
All right, so we're looking to provide more than just here's 5 creatures. Some of them have multiple versions, so like you could have your Dranther and your War Dranther. You could have different sizes for your abyssider. But aside from stat blocks, we wanted to, go into depth on training with each of the creatures. Gold costs for what these creatures would actually cost if you want to buy them, whether you want to buy them as an adult, whether you want to buy them as a baby or an egg, depending upon what the species is, as well as we were looking at trade goods. The abyssider is part spider, so it actually makes silk, and the silk is considered beautiful. It's better than regular silk, so that's in there. We talked about the gantewins having fur, so that fur is useful for in the Arctic plains.
We also included a little bit with that trade goods as well as usage. So, like the barbarian tribes that I mentioned using the kangaroo skulls, that's the aspect that we focused on, just kind of so that you can kind of idea of how they fit in a world and what occurs around them.
Tell us what you think of the fantastical mounts of Chimes of Discordia. We got a place where you can talk about it, and that is down in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can check out the articles over at nerdarchy.com.
Or you can follow us on Instagram.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.